Thanks for joining us, dear viewers. This is our weekly program, Diplomacy. I'm welcome on the mobile host and producing this program for you. Have a beautiful time with our program. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Tirusew Assefa. Dr. Tirusew Assefa is a Florida-based scientist and expert in water resource management about the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam negotiation. He's also actively advocating issues related to the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam GERD, hosting panels with many international experts, tweeting actively about the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam GERD, following the GERD issues in every move and publishing different contents on We Aspire. Have a beautiful time with our program. Dr. Tirusew, many thanks for joining me and welcome to this program.
Thank you for having me.
Just to begin with, who is Dr. Tirusew Assefa and how long you have been working with hydrology and water management? Thank you.
Yes, my expertise is in water supply, water and climate. In the US, I work for a big agency who provide water supply for a metro area of about 2.5 million people. I also give seminars with college courses. So I'm kind of half of my leg in the academia and the other one as a practitioner. So I like to call myself, somewhere in between.
Well, today we're going to discuss about the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam issues. So just to begin with, what are the main objectives of the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance? Why Ethiopia is constructing this dam?
Maybe people know that we have more than 30,000 megawatt potential in Ethiopia in terms of hydropower. GERD accounts about 5 megawatts, 5,000. So this is one of the major projects, not just only for Ethiopia, but for the entire region. In fact, it will be the largest hydropower in Africa as well. So the GERD is not just only from electric production, but there is so many associated benefits. It gets into all kinds of areas, from economy, health, food security. So the contribution GERD is quite a bit in many areas. So that's why Ethiopia is trying to be, for example, self-sufficient in food. Food security is a huge one. So in addition to the electric power production, that's what we can expect in the future as well.
Well, at the moment, how can we express the status of the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam construction at this moment?
Right now, they are about 80 to 83%. It's significant. From my few days communication with different ministries, people working in GERD and other areas, it's my understanding that we will be able to start generating electricity within about a month, somewhere a few weeks to a month, and that's significant. So the two turbines, the number 9 and 10, are in great shape. Basically, they are ready to go. We expect soon electric generation, and it will be connected to the national grid. The grid already, the work is completed. So we are in a great place. So once we start the generating electricity, then we will be able to control the water that's going, the downstream under the structure. If you see now, flow is over the what we call the central block. So they cannot work right now because water is flowing on it. So once we start generating electricity, they will be able to dry quickly this central block, and then they will start to raise that as well. So the generation of electricity, a huge milestone. It may also calm all this noise that we hear from the downstream countries. So we are in great shape as far as I can see.
Well, coming to the operational and technical matters, what will be the next for the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam?
Yeah, the next step is generation, as I said, and then they have to raise the central block to 595, and then the third filling will come next year. So it will really allow them to expedite the work of the construction because, like I said, they will control flows through the turbine. After that, the expectation is within the next 2-3 years, we should be able to completely have it. But between now and then, we will be producing some level of electricity, and that will get into the national grid. It will start to help all these industrial parks and other areas. And in fact, one of the things I was surprised coming here, people even here in the capital, How many times the electricity goes out and come back? I could not believe this. So this is my expectation, and I think we are on the right track that to at least address those issues of interruption as well. But in a few years, we will have full force production, and that will be even much more significant.
Well, why the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam GERD construction is becoming an international agenda and issue at this time?
Well, that's a good question. I think Egypt and Sudan used to be very in sync with Ethiopia because there is so many benefits for Sudan. But Egypt's concern is that not just for GERD, but their concern is that later on, how Ethiopia may use for consumptive water use. So this would be for irrigation, water supply, that actually consumes water. Obviously, Ethiopia also has a share, and we should consume some of the water as well. So Egypt's issue is that the reduction later on, not the GERD. Filling the GERD is not going to impact them at all because their dam, the High Aswan Dam, is full, in fact. The highest it has been in 30 years. So their concern is what happened after GERD. And they want to use GERD right now to make agreements. Their preference is a binding agreement, and then try to stop Ethiopia from using anything upstream of GERD. So that's the main issue. In terms of filling by itself, that should not be a big issue for both of them. Sudan gets a lot of benefits, but even Egypt as well.
Previously, the Sudan government and the Sudan people has pro the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam. They are supporting the dam, but now changing their stand. Why this?
It has been a puzzling for me too. I think there was some change, in the politics and the governments and so on. I mean, if you look back, maybe a year and a half or two, the Sudanese have been saying, how good is GERD? And their own study. I work with Sudanese professionals. We meet every month, not only with Sudanese, with Egyptian professionals as well. Their own study recently shows that, with GERD, the implication is that they will be able to produce more electricity with their own existing infrastructure without doing any more. Because what happens is they will get water throughout the year because GERD will provide a regulated flow. So that will increase their electric production, and then also they can expand their irrigation. They can have more than one season. Right now, summertime they are flooded, the other time they don't, so they may be producing crops only for one season. So there is tremendous amount of benefit. And then this study also shows that there is at least $1 to $2 billion increase in their GDP because of GERD. This doesn't even account some of the issues they have with flooding. This year, last year, tremendous amount of impact to them. The first time we filled, that was one of the highest flood in almost 100 years. We look at the data. They lost more than 200 people, died, and the destruction is hundreds of millions of dollars. So if GERD is in place, all this kind of destruction will be gone. So it is really, to me, it's puzzling and impossible to explain why Sudan is doing what they are doing right now in terms of opposing GERD. Other places you have to actually invest. They are not investing anything. Ethiopia is investing. So other places you have to invest to get this kind of a return on investment. So Sudan, it's not something I can explain using science. Let's put it that way.
Well, you got the chance to speak to the Egyptian experts as well, yeah?
Yes.
Because you always speak with them with different platforms.
Yes.
What is their justification? Why they oppose this Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam?
Now, there is a little bit of difference in Egypt. So there are those professionals who may not agree with me 100%, but they do agree the value of GERD. So those are one. The others are the politicians. They took something else. Even they are away. There are also other, the general public who simply feel like Ethiopia is going to hurt them. Some of them.
By the propaganda of the government.
Yes, so some of the people, they think like that, but the professionals, and I remember a few days ago, maybe a week, I was communicating with the Egyptian professor, and we were chatting. Maybe we talked like 1 hour, and then what's up? What is the big deal? They bring the drought time release from Ethiopia. So that drought time release from Ethiopia is basically, it says that Ethiopia will give priority to fill the High Aswan Dam before GERD is filled. So the issue with that is that we don't know our share. Ethiopia doesn't have any share. If Ethiopia had its own share, it will simply use its own share to fill the dam. So the concern is what if there is a multi-year drought? Right now we are not in a drought. We don't expect the next year, probably not even after that, but at some point drought will come. So when that drought comes, what is the priority of filling the dam? Egypt wants to fill her dam first, and then Ethiopia will come up. Ethiopia says, well, I have also share, I have to fill. So since there is no agreement on share, we don't have any solution. So that's the sticky point. So we know that drought come at some point in the future, but now we are not on a drought. Typically, if you see the Nile flow, we call like a regime type of flow. You have like 10 years of more than average and wet condition, and then you have another subsequent years of drought. So drought will come at some point, but if we have share, if we cooperate, then it should be easier. But I think that's one of their concern. But the way they are addressing is not correct, because they are trying to say Ethiopia has to release everything forever. I mean, there is no any example I can cite in the world that what Egypt is asking Ethiopia to do. It just doesn't exist.
How do you explain, or how do you define the involvement of different international countries, especially the Western countries and their organizations, into the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam's negotiation?
Yes, I think Sudan last time, and then also Egypt, they wanted to bring other actors. I personally don't agree, because the reason is that you bring all these other external players. At the end of the day, it is between Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan. So if they will be the only countries that can solve this for good. But you bringing other mediators actually complicates things. I had a webinar several months back, and I invited many experts, including Sudanese professors and so on. And this was what I got from one of their very famous lawyer. In fact, I asked him this, why is that? There is internationally basically agreement, and a way you bring more people into the table, you complicate even the problem. And then everybody has their own interest also. So for me, it's Ethiopia who has to take care of its own interest. So the African Union is capable. They should be able to solve the problem under that umbrella through we heard African problems with African solutions for African problem, which is correct. So there is no need really to bring other third party like, they are suggesting, the World Bank, US and EU. And we know what happened last time, in 2019. That's how I actually started getting involved to GERD after I saw the proposal written by World Bank and US. And basically that if we were going to agree with that, we wouldn't even be able to fill the dam. We wouldn't, because it's incredible what type of numbers they were proposing. So I don't see there is a need to involve other third parties onto this negotiation.
Well, does the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam construction or the project benefits only Ethiopians? What about the benefit of the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam for the downstream country?
For Egypt, so I mentioned for Sudan, yes. So for Egypt also. So how it benefit the Egypt is actually it provided additional storage. When the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is complete, this will be the largest storage in a basin in the world. So basically doesn't exist, this type of storage. So come drought time in the future, the GERD has to pass, the water has to generate. It's not going to use that conceptually, right? So it's additional storage. The other thing is I can cite a study from their own people. There is a study in Nature journal, for example, by Egyptian and Sudanese professors. They look at climate change. So when climate change, what would happen in the future? One of the things we see, and I look at some of the climate forecast as well for the Nile Basin countries, in all the cases, it says the temperature will rise. And you can see how Addis Ababa is changing actually this month. People were complaining how it is, but you can expect in the future, almost all models, they say temperature will increase. Rainfall will be, variable. One year it will be flood, the other year it will be drought. What do you need? You need to store water. Where? In the highland of Ethiopia. So in fact, to counterbalance climate change, we do need to build more dams, not just GERD, more dams in the cooler, higher region of Ethiopia. Because the temperature rise means more water will evaporate. Right now, the High Aswan Dam is full, like I said, 30 years. So our estimate is about 16 to 17 billion cubic meter right now, just evaporates. So you can imagine 20 years, 30 years from now, when temperature rises, there is even more water is going to be lost through evaporation. So you can see it one way or another, the benefit of the GERD. And in fact, we should even add more, like I said, but the benefit of GERD is not just for Ethiopia, for all the downstream countries, including Egypt.
Well, how do you see the filling of the water, starting from the first to the second, and what is expected for the third one?
The third one, good question. So the third, also, we don't expect any issue in terms of for downstream countries. So Sudan already, whatever goes through the turbine and now overtopping is enough. Just to give you a perspective, the dam downstream of GERD, Sudan, can only hold 7 billion cubic meters. 7. On average, flow in August in Ethiopia is 15. More than that, it comes in a month. So Ethiopia definitely, Sudan doesn't have even that capacity to hold. So it's not going to impact them. Egypt, their reservoir is full. There should not be any impact. And then the third one is we started to look some of the climate prediction for next year. The climate prediction typically are based on how the ocean warms and cools and so on. So the ocean doesn't cool and then suddenly become warm like this. No, it takes years. So because of that, today, the recent forecast I saw from International Research Institute, that's from Columbia University, they forecast 6 months, a year out. There is we expect a more than average rainfall, and the flow should be good this year as well. Last year we were saying that there is no problem, and probably, and I said this by the way, that Sudan should be worried about flooding, not shortage of supply. So based on what we see in terms of the climate, based on what is the situation for High Aswan Dam, we don't see any problem for the third filling as well.
Well, when the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam project will start generating power for all Ethiopians?
It should be in a month. That's based on my discussion and what I am following up. Within few to weeks to a month, I think the expectation is probably December or something like. We are almost there. So I think this is really exciting time. We all are waiting for that. And like I said, if the power production starts, some of this noise will go away as well. The first time how the Egyptian was putting all this media, if Ethiopia fills it in 3 years, 50% of the agricultural land in Egypt will disappear. If it fill it in 5, another 33%. And then in fact, recently we are still in the process of arguing with this professor who put out a study that says Ethiopia is planning to fill the dam in 3 years which is impossible. He said it will fill it in 3 years, and 70% of the agricultural land will disappear. So they try to scare people, and I cannot, you can understand some, the public may get scared, but there is no problem in terms of what we see. The first came and went, the second filling came and went, the third filling as well. So once they see we are producing electricity and we are passing with the water as well, I don't think there will be a big issue, and that will be a big milestone as well.
Well, what would be the minimum or the height of the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam to generate power?
I believe the minimum, I think, is 563 or 64. So we are way past that. So for us right now, what we have is enough to generate power as well. So that, there is enough water to do that. And once we generate, like I said, we will be able to dry the central block, and then we raise high, and then we can hold even more next the third filling. So I expect we'll be putting relatively bigger number on the third cycle as well.
Last time Sudan was worried about the safety of the dam. What is your take on what is your comment regarding this point?
The safety of the dam, there is a couple of things. So they mix a couple of things. One safety is the structural safety. If something happened and the dam collapse, this has been argued long time ago. Expert has looked at it. I mean, this is just debunked long time ago. So that should not be a problem. But the other safety is in terms of coordination. As I mentioned, Sudan cannot hold, it's unable to hold too much water because they don't have that much of a space for the dam, which is downstream of the GERD. So for that, they need a communication with Ethiopia. That's for sure. I agree with that. And I think Ethiopia is also willing to give, to exchange this information. And other than that, this safety issue is simply not supported by scientific, studies. So I will leave it at that.
Well, apart from the multiple benefit of the project, what would be the main benefits that the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam can give apart from generating power for Ethiopians? What are the main other pointers or benefits that the GERD can give for all Ethiopians?
Yeah, so the power gets into other economic, the supporting economic direction. So one of the things I think from what I see, the estimate is that for every $1 that you generate electricity, you get $6 to $7 more through the economy-wide benefit. So what it means is that there is this cascade effect of, you do electricity, then your industrial park starts to work, then you create another work, that one create this, that, so it multiplies. So typically the benefit of the GERD is not just really putting a dollar amount of the electric generation, but what we call the cascading effect of economy-wide implications. And that number is huge. $6 to $7 for every dollar generated means that's significant. So it gets into many places. You can attach it to healthcare, so many things. You can attach it to school. Right now, people even can't study in the evening. I mean, they have to wait to study, or they have to use very terrible situation, hurting themselves. Healthcare is a huge one. There is so many things that you can attach. In fact, almost, I think all of the sustainable development goals that was put, by UN can be addressed using just GERD. So many areas it can get as well.
How can you express the importance of the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam for climate change as well?
The climate change is with storage. So that's the big one. So storage is a huge one because in Ethiopia, the expectation is that the rainfall will be more variable. So with that storage, it will be good in the adaptation. But if you look at it from a mitigation perspective, this is from carbon emission. This is the cleanest electric production that you can think. Fossil fuel and other kind of resources are very, very intensive, and their emission, carbon dioxide emission, is much higher. So from both mitigation and adaptation perspective, GERD is what everybody needs to have. In fact, clean energy is a huge one. In that aspect, so it is working on both ways. So for adaptation in terms of climate change impact, from drought and water storage, as well as from mitigation perspective.
Coming to the negotiation on the ground, Ethiopia Renaissance Dam, since the GERD is started, which means it is now more than 1 decade, the negotiation is underway. Why they failed to get on agreements? What is the sticky point here?
The sticky point, and if I have to summarize, it goes back to trying to maintain the status quo of Nile water use. Egypt doesn't want anybody else to use, especially consumptive water use. I remember one of their negotiators, he said, in their proposal, he said, we put a circuit breaker. So what it means is circuit breaker, when something shocks, basically you are protecting. So what it means is that they want to control all other development and all other activities on the upper Nile basin, rather than trying to figure out, okay, how much water it is, and then how we can do this in a cooperative manner. So why it's taking so long, is simply because of Egypt's unwillingness to share the water of the Nile. Bottom line, they don't want to share. They want to keep 100% of the 1959 agreement basically with Sudan. In fact, Sudan doesn't use even the 18.5. In that agreement, it says 84 billion, the total, 84 billion cubic meters. But our estimate is much more than that. So on paper, Egypt seems like they use 15.5. No, they probably is 70, even 80 billion cubic meters. So when you are using this much of water for so long, you don't want anybody else to come up and mess what you think it belongs to you. I think that's the problem. So Egypt is looking at to maintain the status quo of, I'm going to use this water basically alone. That's it. I mean, maybe it's hidden in all the things they provide, but the underlying thing is that you cannot use this water. That's what they're saying. We are the only one who want to use.
It's kind of selfishness, yeah?
Big time selfishness, because this is not the way. Even for them, I think if you look at from the science perspective, everybody can get a lot better out of it. In fact, what we advocate with my group and research and so on is to look at it from water, food, energy perspective. People-centered planning, they call it. So when you think about a person, what does a person need? It needs the water, it needs energy, it needs food. And how best you can do this within the Nile Basin. So it doesn't mean that, okay, Ethiopia should only generate electricity and then stop. I remember, I think Dr. Seleshi mentioned, I like this expression, that it cannot be on the back of the Ethiopian farmers that they cannot produce anything. So basically, we do need more than electricity. We do need agricultural expansion. Maybe Sudan has a lot of agriculture, that's fine. But Ethiopia also needs agricultural expansion. So we cannot just say, okay, you produce electricity and that's it. There are so many farmers there. We need for farming as well as for supply. So if we look at it from water, food, energy perspective, then it would have been easier for all the three countries to work. Not just only others as well, but I think focusing just only my use, the Egypt side is that one. That's very difficult. That's the whole issue. It took more than a decade with no agreement.
For the future, what is expected to reach an agreement? What's expected from the Egypt side, from Ethiopia side, and from all the stakeholders participating on the negotiation?
I think Egypt, they are going to continue what they are doing for now. But I think from my perspective, probably easier way will be to agree on what we call the first filling. So basically, they can coordinate and fill the dam without any water allocation through the so-called binding agreement that they are looking at. Because the binding agreement translates into water allocation, and currently it's zero for Ethiopia. So I think it's doable. And from what I saw, some of their draft proposal during the negotiation, even we can go back the one to the US, and World Bank, there is some agreement. They could agree on how to fill the dam for the first filling. So when I say first filling, it's not the second year, third year. It's completely until it gets into 74 billion cubic meter. Once you have that, you then build confidence. We can take the example of Takaze River. Takaze is small, but there was no any formal agreement between Ethiopia and Sudan. Sudan was very worried about that. But now, if you see, they enjoy regulated flow. Their farmers fishing, the fishers, and so on. I have a video from them. One of the fishermen, he was saying, before I used to do only 1 time per year. Now I can do 3 times. It's a fisherman there. So once you have the feeling the same thing with the GERD, and then you build confidence, then you come to water sharing or benefit sharing, whatever the name is. They can come to that more comprehensive agreement that should include other countries in the Nile Basin. You can't just agree with sub-basin between only these 3 countries. There are 11 countries here, there too. So I think what's doable from what I see, the negotiation is that you can agree on the first filling, and once that's finished, build the confidence and go to the more complex, comprehensive water allocation agreement.
Well, lastly, is there any obstacle for the third water filling operation, and what is the impact on the downstream countries in your perspective?
I don't see any impact for them. There is, it's up to Ethiopia now in terms of where we are. So, like I said, for the moment we generate, we will be able to dry the central block. We can pull it up and pick it up and start to be prepared for the third filling. In terms of the weather, the climate, we don't see any impact. Highest one dam, as I said, it's the highest in 30 years. So the third filling should not be any issue for both Sudan and Egypt.
Well, Dr. Tirusew Assefa, many thanks for joining me. I really appreciate your thoughts, your best things that you shared to us. Thank you very much for joining me again.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Dear viewers, this will bring us to the end of this edition. I will come on the mobile hosting and producing this program for you. Many thanks for joining us again. Till the next edition. Have a beautiful time.